The facade falls. Ambassador Elena Reyes maintained her practiced diplomatic smile as High Commander Vex Troll of the Valkyrie Empire slammed his armored fist on the central podium of the Galactic Concord Chamber. The sound reverberated through the massive hall, causing several delegates from the smaller species to flinch. Not Elena. After 12 years as Earth's representative, she had grown accustomed to such displays. "The humans have no right to interfere in this matter," roared Vex Troll, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's crystalline lights. Four segmented arms gesticulated wildly as he continued. Their primitive understanding of galactic affairs and pathetic technological development makes their concerns irrelevant. Elena observed the 9-foot-tall warrior diplomat without revealing any emotion. The Valkyrie were among the Concord's founding species, and their military might had subjugated dozens of star systems. For nearly 30 Earth years, humanity had played the role of the galaxy's humble newcomers. The charade had been necessary, if exhausting. The Concord Chamber housed representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations. Curved tiers of seating surrounded a central speaking area, with the most powerful species occupying the lowest rings. Earth's seat was near the top, a deliberate placement they had never contested. "With respect, High Commander," Elena replied softly, her voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "Earth merely suggests that the indigenous population of Helios 5 be consulted before mining operations begin. Their civilization, while pre-spaceflight, shows remarkable neural complexity and social structures." Several delegates exchanged glances. The humans were always advocating for lesser species, always appearing idealistic and naive. The Drazine representative, positioned in one of the privileged bottom rings, stirred in response. Unlike most species, the Drazine existed as colonies of crystalline structures that channeled energy through their silicon-based bodies. The delegate's voice resonated with harmonic overtones as it spoke. "The primitives of Helios 5 lack faster-than-light technology," it intoned. "By Concord law, their opinions hold no weight in resource allocation decisions." Several delegates nodded in agreement. The Galactic Concord's stance had always been clear. Without FTL capability, a species had no standing. It was a convenient rule that had allowed the powerful to exploit countless worlds. Elena nodded politely and returned to her seat. Her assistant, Marcus Chen, leaned close. "Same response as always," he whispered, disappointment evident in his voice. "Patience," Elena replied, her expression revealing nothing. The Concord proceeded with the vote on the Helios 5 proposal. Holographic displays tallied the results as each delegation registered their decision. Earth's lone dissenting vote was barely noticed among the sea of approvals. The measure passed overwhelmingly, authorizing what they euphemistically called resource acquisition, rather than the invasion it truly was. As Elena began gathering her notes, her neural implant vibrated subtly against her skull. A message scrolled across her field of vision, visible only to her enhanced senses, a security measure developed on Earth, but disguised as primitive medical technology. She read it twice. "Purotokiko-LCERBEORES, authorized. Maintain position. Centennial Fleet inbound." Her heart rate increased slightly, but decades of diplomatic training kept her expression neutral. After 30 years of watching, learning, and pretending to be weak, Earth had finally decided it was time to show the galaxy who they really were. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" Marcus asked, noticing her momentary pause. "Yes," she replied, rising from her seat, "but I believe we should return to the embassy immediately." As they walked through the grand corridors of the Concord Hall, various alien delegates passed by, most ignoring the humans completely. Some offered condescending nods, the kind reserved for beings considered harmless and irrelevant. The Earth Embassy was deliberately designed to appear functional but unimpressive, another element of their long-running deception. Once inside her secure office, Elena placed her palm against a seemingly ordinary wall panel. "Privacy protocol activate," she commanded. The room's lights dimmed momentarily as advanced security systems, far beyond what the Concord believed humans possessed, engaged around them. "Establish direct link to Earth Command, Priority Alpha," Elena ordered. Marcus's eyes widened. "Alpha? But that's—" "I know what it is," Elena interrupted. "It's time." The air in the center of the room shimmered as a holographic projection formed. Not the crude images other species had seen humans use, but a perfect three-dimensional representation of Admiral Zhang Wei, Earth Defense Force Commander. "Ambassador Reyes," the Admiral greeted her, his face grave. "I assume you've received the Cerberus authorization." "Yes, Admiral. May I ask what triggered the protocol?" The Admiral's image gestured, bringing up additional displays showing Helios 5 and surrounding space. "Valkyrie forces began landing on Helios 5 2 hours ago. They're not following the standard resource extraction protocols. They're eliminating the indigenous population." Elena felt a chill run through her. Complete elimination. "They're calling it clearing the workspace. Our deep cover agents report they're using ecological weaponry to make the planet more suitable for their mining operations. The Concord isn't being informed of the true extent." For decades, humanity had watched similar atrocities unfold across the galaxy while maintaining their cover. Each time, they had documented, analyzed, and prepared. Each time, they had sworn, never again. "What are my orders?" Elena asked, standing straighter. "Maintain your diplomatic position. Act surprised when necessary. The EDF Athena has already departed Earth space and will arrive at Helios 5 within 4 hours. Additional fleet elements are mobilizing now." Marcus looked between them, his young face showing both excitement and apprehension. "The Valkyrie have 23 warships in that sector, Admiral." Admiral Zhang smiled for the first time. "The Athena will be more than sufficient for a demonstration." As the transmission ended, Elena walked to the window overlooking the Concord capital city. Massive structures of impossibly advanced materials reached toward the sky, built by species who believed themselves the pinnacle of evolution and technology. "We've waited a long time for this," she said quietly. Marcus joined her at the window. "Do you think they'll understand why we deceived them?" Elena thought about the countless civilizations that had been exploited, the species rendered extinct, all while the Concord's powerful members looked away or, worse, profited. "They'll understand soon enough," she replied. "Earth has been polite for 30 years. That time is over." Captain Shen Qiu stood perfectly still on the bridge of the EDF Athena. Her black uniform bore no rank insignia or decorations, none of the elaborate markings that Concord species use to display status. Earth had long ago learned that true power required no announcement. "Phase shift drive disengage," Captain, reported Lieutenant Quan at the helm. "We've reached the Helios 5 system." Shen nodded, studying the main display. The Valkyrie fleet hung in orbit around the blue-green world below. 23 warships, each bristling with weapons that most civilizations feared. Their designs were intentionally intimidating, with angular profiles and exposed weapon arrays meant to inspire terror. "Scan the surface," Shen ordered. The ship's sensors bypassed the Valkyrie jamming fields with ease, revealing the situation below. 2 major population centers were burning. Valkyrie landing craft had deployed ground forces that were moving methodically through settlements. "Life signs?" Shen asked, her voice tight. "Approximately 63% of the indigenous population remains," Captain, responded her science officer. "The Valkyrie are being methodical." Shen took a deep breath. For decades, she had trained for this moment. Like all Earth Defense Force officers, she had studied countless similar atrocities while humanity maintained its mask of technological inferiority. The waiting had been the hardest part, watching, learning, and preparing while innocent species suffered. "Disengage stealth field," she commanded. "Full sensors active. Let them see us." The Athena shimmered into visibility. At first glance, it appeared smaller than the massive Valkyrie destroyers. Another deception. Most of the ship's true mass existed in folded space, ready to deploy if needed. "They're scanning us, sir," reported the communications officer. "Their readings will show them something unexpected." On the Valkyrie vessels, alarms were sounding. What their sensors had initially identified as a small human transport suddenly registered as something very different. A ship composed of materials their science couldn't identify, powered by energy sources that shouldn't exist. "Open a channel to the Valkyrie command vessel," Shen ordered. "All frequencies, all languages." The main screen flickered to show the Valkyrie fleet commander, a massive warrior in a command exoskeleton, his 4 arms working multiple control interfaces simultaneously. "This is Captain Shen Xiao of Earth," Shen broadcast, her voice calm and measured. "Cease your attack on Helios 5 immediately." The Valkyrie commander's reaction was visible even across species barriers. His upper eye stalks twitched rapidly, a sign of surprise, before his features settled into a familiar expression of contempt. "A human vessel." The commander's laughter echoed through the comms. "One human ship against a battle fleet. Your species' stupidity continues to amaze." Shen remained expressionless as the Valkyrie commander continued. "Your primitive vessel has somehow managed to reach us quickly. Impressive for your kind. But surely even humans understand basic mathematics. One ship cannot stand against 23. Return to your world and beg the Concord for forgiveness for this interference." Shen glanced at her weapons officer, who waited with quiet readiness. The entire bridge crew knew what came next, the moment humanity would finally remove its mask. "We were being polite," Shen said simply. "That time is ended." She nodded once to her weapons officer. "Begin the demonstration." What followed wasn't a battle but a precise, calculated show of force. The Athena's systems activated in perfect sequence. First, gravity manipulation fields extended outward, creating localized distortions that disrupted the Valkyrie weapon systems. Their energy cannons tried to fire, but the beams curved harmlessly into space. Next, the Athena deployed targeted electromagnetic pulses specifically calibrated to Valkyrie technology. Communication systems failed across their fleet, isolating each vessel from the others. The final phase used precision strikes from advanced quantum displacement projectors. Each shot severed key propulsion components without threatening life support or crew quarters. The Athena moved with impossible speed, appearing beside each Valkyrie vessel long enough to disable it before shifting to the next target. Within 11 minutes, the entire Valkyrie fleet hung dead in space, disabled but intact, with no casualties. Shen opened the channel again. The Valkyrie commander's face showed raw shock, his exoskeleton motionless as he struggled to comprehend what had happened. "This was a demonstration, not an attack," Shen explained calmly. "Had we wished to destroy your fleet, we would have done so. Your vessels are disabled, not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed." What are you?" the Valkyrie commander managed to ask. "We are exactly what we have always been," Shen replied. "Humans who chose peace until peace was no longer an option. Your forces will withdraw from Helios 5 immediately. Earth vessels will arrive shortly to provide aid to the planet's population." She ended the transmission and turned to her crew. "Send the complete record to Earth Command. Ambassador Rice will need it for the Concord session." The reckoning. Back at the Galactic Concord headquarters, emergency sessions had erupted into chaos. The main chamber, normally a model of ordered procedure, had descended into a cacophony of shouted questions and demands. Species that had dismissed humans for decades suddenly found themselves facing an uncomfortable truth. Ambassador Elena Rice sat calmly at Earth's humble seat in the upper tier as accusations flew. "The humans have violated Concord law," roared High Commander Vextrol. "They concealed military technology. They attacked our peaceful resource expedition." The chamber's central display showed the Athena's demonstration in perfect detail. There was no denying what had happened. the most powerful military fleet in the Valkyrie Armada, immobilized in minutes by a single Earth vessel. The Concord Elder, a cetacean whose species valued truth above all else, raised his massive fins for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. "Ambassador Reyes," the Elder said, his voice resonating through the hall, "your species has clearly engaged in a systematic deception of this Concord for 30 years. You have presented yourselves as technologically inferior, while developing capabilities that appear to surpass even our most advanced members." He fixed his large eyes on Elena. "Why the deception?" Elena rose from her seat and walked slowly to the central podium. Unlike previous Concord sessions, no one interrupted her movement. No one dismissed her presence. Every representative watched in intense silence. "Would you have welcomed us as equals if you knew our true capabilities?" she asked, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Or would you have tried to destroy us before we could become a threat?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Throughout galactic history, advanced civilizations had systematically eliminated potential rivals before they could develop. It was an unspoken practice that everyone recognized, but no one acknowledged. "Humanity chose to survive," Elena continued. "We studied your histories. We saw how the Valkyrie eliminated the Solarians when their technology began to advance too quickly. We witnessed how the Drazen absorbed the Centauri civilization when they developed faster-than-light communication." She gestured to the display showing the disabled Valkyrie fleet. "We chose deception over destruction. We chose to watch and wait rather than reveal ourselves and be targeted. And we chose to intervene today because some lines must not be crossed, even by the most powerful members of this Concord." High Commander Vextral hissed in fury. "You dare judge us? Your primitive world was still burning fossil fuels when we had mastered interstellar travel." Elena smiled for the first time. "And yet here we are." The Valkyrie Imperial Palace glowed red under the light of twin suns. The structure stretched across an entire mountain range, built from the bones of conquered worlds and the labor of subjugated species. In the war chamber, Emperor Kralvex, supreme ruler of the Valkyrie and self-proclaimed conqueror of 1,000 stars, watched the holographic replay of his fleet's humiliation for the 8th time. His eye stalks twitched rapidly as the single human vessel disabled his prized warships with apparent ease. "Impossible," he hissed, massive armored fists gripping the arms of his throne. "The humans are primitives. Their technology is basic. We have monitored them for decades." His advisors stood in fearful silence. 3 had already been executed for failing to detect Earth's true capabilities. "They deceived us," said General Moxtrol, the only advisor brave enough to speak. "They presented a false face while developing in secret." Kralvex rose to his full height of nearly 12 feet, his battle exoskeleton clanking with the movement. "Then they will learn why deception against the Valkyrie is punished by extinction," he said. He pressed a talon against the central control panel. "Send the signal. Activate the cleansing protocol. I want every warship, every fighter, every battle-capable vessel gathered at the rendezvous point within 2 cycles." General Moxtrol's exoskeleton paled slightly. "Emperor, the cleansing protocol has not been used since we eliminated the Solarians," Kralvex finished. "Yes, and now we will use it again. The humans have revealed themselves as a threat. We will respond accordingly." Across Valkyrie-controlled space, thousands of warships began moving toward predetermined coordinates. Battle stations powered up. Weapons systems that hadn't been used in generations were brought online. Deep storage facilities released planet-killer missiles and atmosphere-stripping bombs. The Valkyrie were mobilizing for total war. The Drazen Collective, ancient rivals of the Valkyrie, but sharing their philosophy that the strong should dominate the weak, had also begun preparations. Their crystalline high ships emerged from the gaseous clouds where they normally resided, forming patterns that hadn't been seen in millennia. War formations. Back on the Concord homeworld, Ambassador Elena Reyes received the intelligence reports with grim acceptance. Earth's deep cover agents throughout Valkyrie Andrazine Space had been sending encrypted messages for hours, detailing the massive military buildup. "They're preparing a full-scale assault," said Marcus, highlighting movement patterns on the galactic display. "More ships than they've ever gathered in one place." Elena nodded. As expected, the Valkyrie have never responded to embarrassment with anything but overwhelming force. "The Drazine are also mobilizing," Marcus added. "Their vessels have been observed leaving their nebula nurseries in the galactic arms. It appears they've formed an alliance with the Valkyrie." Elena wasn't surprised. The two dominant species have been rivals for centuries, but they shared a common philosophy. Power was meant to be exercised over the weak. "Inform Earth Command," she ordered. "Activate Defense Protocol Omega and request an emergency Concord session." 3 hours later, Elena stood at the center of the Concord chamber. Unlike previous sessions where Earth's representative had been relegated to the upper tiers, she now commanded the central podium. The chamber was filled to capacity, with representatives from every spacefaring species in attendance. "The Valkyrie Empire has mobilized its entire military," she announced without preamble. "Their target is Earth. They intend to demonstrate that challenging the established order results in extinction." Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Valkyrie and Drazine representatives were conspicuously absent. "You've awakened predators far more dangerous than you realize," Elena continued, her voice carrying throughout the vast space. "The Valkyrie do not tolerate challenges to their dominance. They never have." The Cetacean Elder's voice rumbled through the chamber. "Your species engaged in deliberate deception for decades. The consequences are of your own making." Elena turned to face the massive being. "We kept our technological advancements secret because history taught us what happens when civilizations view each other as threats rather than potential allies. Your own records show that any species approaching the level of the dominant powers mysteriously disappears." "Speculation," the elder dismissed. "Fact," Elena countered. "We have maintained records of every species eliminated because they developed too quickly. Every civilization deemed a potential threat and subsequently removed. The Solarians, the Centauri, the Rigelians, all erased because they might one day challenge the established powers." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of dozens of different species. "We chose deception over destruction, and we chose intervention on Helios 5, because genocide cannot be tolerated, regardless of who commits it." The Cetacean Elder's massive body shifted in agitation. Bold words from a species about to face extinction. "The combined might of the Valkyrie and Drazine armadas has never been defeated." To prove her point, Elena activated the small device on her wrist. It looked simple, a band of metal that could have been mistaken for jewelry. The center of the chamber shimmered as reality itself seemed to fold inward, a stable wormhole. Technology the Concord had deemed theoretically impossible opened before the stunned representatives. Through the swirling portal, they could see Earth's solar system, but not as it currently existed. This was a view from multiple positions simultaneously, showing Earth, Mars, Jupiter and its moons, and the outer reaches of the system. And everywhere, ships. Thousands upon thousands of vessels of human design, of varying sizes and configurations, all powered by technology that the Concord had believed was centuries away from development. "We could have deployed weapons throughout Concord space at any time," she said as the portal closed with a soft pulse. "We could have struck without warning. Instead, we chose peace. We chose patience. Until now." The chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now realized the true extent of Earth's deception, and the implications were staggering. As the uproar continued, a small avian representative from the Ixeri Confederation approached Elena. The Ixeri had suffered under Valkyrie exploitation for centuries, their resource worlds stripped and their people used as labor. "Earth has always spoken for the lesser species," the Ixeri said, her feathers fluffed with emotion. "When our worlds were being devastated, only human representatives objected. When our people were enslaved, only Earth filed formal protests. She extended a winged appendage in the universal gesture of alliance. The HFY Confederation stands with Earth. One by one, other representatives came forward. The Proximans, whose atmospheric planets had been harvested by the Drazen. The Tausicians, whose colonies existed on the edges of Valkyrie space. Dozens of species that had endured exploitation while a Concord looked away. "We have monitored your communications," the Proximan delegate said, his tentacles forming patterns of respect. "For 30 years, humanity has been the only major power to treat us with genuine respect, to advocate for our rights even when it gained you nothing." By the end of the session, 34 species had formally aligned with Earth, not because of fear, not because of power, but because, as the Tausician representative put it, when you could have been conquerors, you chose to be protectors. As Elena left the Concord chamber, Marcus met her with urgent news. "The combined Valkyrie and Drazen armadas have entered the Sol system," he reported. "They're encountering the outer defense perimeter now." Elena nodded. For 30 years, humanity had hidden their true nature from the galaxy. They had watched and waited, building in secret while presenting a facade of technological inferiority. The waiting was over. Admiral Zhang Wei stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the approaching armada through the transparent dome. The combined Valkyrie and Drazen fleet stretched across space like a massive storm cloud, thousands of warships against a single solar system. "They've entered the outer defense perimeter," reported General Quan beside him. "Sensor platforms confirm 8,721 hostile vessels." Zhang nodded calmly, his uniform lacking the elaborate decorations favored by military leaders of other species. In his 60 years of service to Earth Defense Force, he had prepared for this moment. "Are the civilian shelters secured?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral. All Earth populations and colonial settlements have activated protection protocols. Civilian casualties will be minimal if any penetrate our defenses." Zhang looked out at the approaching armada with steady eyes. "Humanity has been patient for 30 years. We've watched species like the Valkyrie and Drazen dominate and destroy while we prepared in secret. We've documented their atrocities and developed our technology not for conquest, but for protection." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to the invading fleet." The officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." "This is Admiral Zhang Wei of the Earth Defense Force," he broadcast, his voice calm and measured. "You have entered Earth space with hostile intent. We have observed your kind for decades. We know how you treat those you consider weak. We kept our strength hidden because we chose peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But make no mistake, we were never weak. We were just being polite. That time is over. This is your only warning. Turn back now, or face the consequences of your actions." The response was predictable. Weapons fire from the leading edge of the Valkyrie fleet, a demonstration of their resolve and contempt. Zhang nodded once to General Quan. "Activate the solar shield." Throughout the solar system, thousands of seemingly dormant satellites simultaneously came online. Energy patterns that had never been detected by Concord science spread between them, forming a vast, interconnected network. The leading Valkyrie vessels slammed into an invisible barrier, their kinetic energy dispersed harmlessly into subspace. "Phase 2, Zhang ordered quietly. From Earth's moon, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, massive defense platforms emerged from hiding. Not the crude weapons the Concord believed humans possessed, but gravity manipulation arrays, quantum displacement cannons, and technologies that the Valkyrie and Drazen couldn't even comprehend. The Earth fleet moved with perfect coordination, vessels appearing and disappearing as they shifted through folded space. There was no wasted movement, no dramatic flourishes, just the methodical application of overwhelming technological superiority. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Within 2 hours, the entire invasion force had been neutralized, not destroyed, but rendered completely immobile, their weapons and engines disabled with surgical precision. Not a single alien crew member had been killed. Zong opened the channel again. We could have destroyed your fleets and your homeworlds. We have had the capability to do so for decades. Instead, we disabled your vessels without casualties. Your crews will be returned to your territories unharmed. He paused, letting his message register with the stunned alien commanders. Humanity desires peace, but we will no longer tolerate the exploitation of any sentient species. The strong protecting the weak is the mark of a truly advanced civilization. Remember this lesson well. 1 month later, the Galactic Concord convened its most historic session. The chamber had been reconfigured, the tiered seating replaced with a circular arrangement where all species sat as equals. The Valkyrie and Drazine, their military might broken, occupied seats no more prominent than any other. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the center of the chamber, alongside representatives from all the formerly oppressed species that had allied with Earth. Today marks a new beginning for our galaxy, she announced. Earth proposes a new concord, one based not on technological superiority or military might, but on mutual respect and protection for all sentient life. She gestured to the assembled representatives. We kept our strength hidden because history taught us that power often corrupts. We watched and waited, not out of fear, but because we hoped the dominant species would evolve beyond conquest and exploitation. The Ixeri representative stepped forward. The Valkyrie took our worlds and enslaved our people. Humanity could have done the same to them after their defeat. Instead, they offered protection and partnership. One by one, representatives of formerly subjugated species spoke of Earth's quiet diplomacy over the decades. The human diplomats who had advocated for them when no one else would, who had documented atrocities that the Concord had ignored, who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to mitigate the worst abuses of power. Even the Cetacean elder, once dismissive of human concerns, acknowledged the truth. For 30 years, we mistook Earth's politeness for weakness. We were wrong. Their restraint was their greatest strength. The new Galactic Charter was ratified unanimously. No longer would technological development determine a species' right to exist. No longer would the strong be permitted to exploit the weak. Earth's hidden fleet would serve not as conquerors, but as protectors. As Elena left the chamber, Marcus walked beside her. 30 years of deception, he said quietly. Was it worth it? Elena looked out at the representatives of hundreds of worlds, now talking as equals for the first time. We didn't deceive them about who we are, she replied. We simply didn't show them everything we could do. There's a difference. She smiled. Humanity has always believed that true strength lies not in domination, but in protection. We were never weak. We were just being polite. Throughout the galaxy, word spread quickly. The humans, once dismissed as naive newcomers, had become the architects of a new galactic order. Not through conquest, not through fear, but through the most unexpected of weapons. Patience, restraint, and a moral compass that had never wavered. Earth's message to the galaxy's strongest was clear. We were just being polite. Until we weren't. And the galaxy was better for it.